last year at this time, prices were crashing hard and we were excited. I mean, hello, housing correction. Let's bring some affordability back to the housing market. But prices rebounded over the spring and summer, and we would expect that to a degree. But there was some serious interference going on that affected what we should have been seeing. Well, now the fall market is upon us. Prices are dropping again, and we have to ask the question, is this just about seasonality, or will home prices stay low this time? Well, hello, this is Wendy Pennell, and there's a lot of talk about seasonality these days. And if you're not familiar with the term, seasonality is the concept that home prices rise in the spring and summer and drop in the fall and winter. Well, most realtors are going to argue that Dallas seasonality definitely exists, though I did watch a video recently where a fairly well-known YouTuber argued that there was no such thing as seasonality at all, and he advised that buyers not be misled by that. I think when we consider both sides, I think we can say to a degree that they're both right. The YouTuber provided a lot of data on a national level, okay, but his focus was not drilled down to Dallas. So from, a large bird's eye view of the entire United States, I suppose it is possible, that seasonality is not a thing. However, from a Dallas perspective, the numbers don't lie, okay? In a normal market with no unusual prevailing conditions, year after year, we see seasonality. That being said, beginning in 2022, we did see some prevailing conditions, right? As in the Federal Reserve raising rates 11 times in a year. Sarah Foster reports that policymakers raised interest rates another quarter point in July to a new target range of 5.25 to 5.55%. A decision that marks the 11th increase in 12 meetings. Now, I would call that a prevailing condition, right? That should have triggered a response beyond seasonality, and in many areas across the country, it did. The problem is that in Dallas, at first, it triggered a massive drop. We saw values drop 12% when the seasonal average is 8%. The problem is it didn't last. So let's talk about why we didn't see a sustained correction and what would need to happen for us to see a sustained correction going forward. Well, if we look back in June of 2022, we definitely saw a huge drop in prices. Like I mentioned earlier, we were all kind of thinking and maybe hoping that this was like the start of a 2008 style housing correction. The problem is that in February, the market began to rebound. In fact, the Dallas Morning News recently reported that home prices in Dallas-Fort Worth stood in place from June to July following 5 months of consecutive gains, and they haven't changed much from a year ago despite interest rate hikes. So home prices dropped significantly between June and January, but then we regained most of it. The numbers don't lie, right? In July, the median home price in Dallas was $415,000, which is down about 1% from a year ago. And this would be after bottoming out around $380,000 in January. This really looks like seasonality, right? The prices, they went down, right back up again. When we should have seen a sustained correction, instead we saw a seasonal one. Okay, so why is that? All the factors are there. We have an unaffordability problem, and we have the Fed making it worse every time they raise rates. Well, we need to talk about new construction, right? These home builders have completely interfered with the market. Home builders going into the spring knew they were in trouble. As Ted Wilson describes, housing affordability has become increasingly challenging. He continues, monthly payments on houses are now over 50% higher than they were in January of 2022. So what did our home builders do? Well, they started getting creative in their efforts to attract buyers without lowering prices. Instead of cutting the overall price of the home, they're offering mortgages at below market interest rates, which makes the monthly payments more affordable. You see, builders know most buyers are more inclined to base what they're willing to spend on what their monthly payment will be, not the total price of the home or how much debt they're taking on. Mitchell Parton describes how discounts and incentives from builders such as interest rate buydowns have pushed buyers towards new construction. The real deal, they explain it best though. Okay, they describe how builders are reaching into their bag of tricks to keep prices of newly constructed homes relatively low, offering discounts and incentives. They continue explaining that one tactic is rate buydowns, which allows builders to pay a portion of a home's cost up front to lower the interest rate. Now, here's the crux of their point. By lowering the interest rates, builders can discount the property without changing the asking price. So when we should have seen prices dropping, all right, when we should have seen a correction that lasted beyond seasonality, builders began offering fixed rates as low as 4.99% when the market rate is well above 7%. How are they able to do this? Well, they have their own in-house lenders. And while there is a cost to paying down the rate, it's a lot cheaper for them than it would be for you, the buyer. Right? Now, the way it works is the mortgage company originates the loan, but they still have to sell it on the secondary market. So it does cost them to pay down the rates. But because it's an in-house lender, it stands to reason that it's not going to cost them as much. And what I mean by that is if you had to pay down your interest rate, it would cost you a whole lot more than what it's costing these in-house lenders. Nonetheless, they're paying down the interest rates, and this is a very big deal. Now, I realize at first glance, a 2% difference may not seem like much, all right, but it makes a massive impact on a buyer's monthly payment. And let's just say you've got your eye on a $300,000 house. At a 7% interest rate, your mortgage payment would be $19.96 per month. But at a 5% interest rate, that same mortgage drops to $16.10 per month. All right, we're talking a difference of $386 per month. To put it another way, to get the same $16.10 monthly payment at a 7% interest rate, which is what the going rate is right now, right? A buyer would only be able to afford a $250,000 house. All right, that's a $50,000 reduction in price that we all thought we would see with the current market conditions. I mean, there's your correction. It's what we need to see to get Dallas on a more affordable track. But thanks to these crafty builders, we're not seeing that price reduction at all. Take a look at what some of these local builders have been offering over the summer months. D.R. Horton is offering financing at 5.75% on homes of at least $346,990. Antares Homes is offering financing at 4.99% on homes of at least $450,000. Taylor Morrison is offering 30-year loans at 3.99% for the first year, 4.99% for the second year, and 5.99% for the remainder of the loan. To buyers with limited options, it sounds like they're getting a fantastic deal, but they're very likely paying more than they would have if builders weren't manipulating the market. I mean, one of the risks for buyers in this situation is paying more than what the new home will appraise for, leaving them scrambling to come up with a larger down payment because the lender is not going to give them the original loan amount. Plus, there's the whole issue of being upside down. When you owe more than your home is worth and you need to sell, you hit crisis mode real fast. And I want you to think about this. It's not just customers who get the bad end of the deal with builders artificially jacking up prices. The entire economy gets out of whack. Since home prices remain high, the Fed is getting inaccurate signals about the state of the economy, making it more likely that they're going to continue to raise interest rates. According to the latest numbers for the Consumer Price Index, the price for shelter has gone up 7.8% in the last year and accounts for 85% of the increase in the price of all items, which went up 3% in that time. Now, that's not at all surprising considering shelter represents a whopping 34.7% of typical monthly expenses. Now, you might be wondering why new construction affects the Dallas housing market so much. Well, that's because it's what Dallas has. All of our homeowners in Dallas don't want to give up their 3% interest rates, okay? Like it or not, they're staying put. They are not selling. So we pretty much have to depend on these home builders for inventory. As Mitchell Parton mentions in his article, he says, what's available on the pre-owned market is just nothing that's super attractive. By and large, in Dallas right now, it could be argued that the interest rate is not 7%, it's 5%. Home builders are undermining the Fed's efforts, and meanwhile, the Dallas housing market is just humming right along. All right, so the fall buying season is upon us, and even home builders can't work their way out of this one. We're seeing prices drop because there's such a disparity between the volume of home buyers between when school is in and when it is out of session. Like, here's an example. In Salina, home prices are now down 20% year over year. Just between June and July alone, we saw a 13% drop. In McKinney, between June and July, we saw a price drop of around 8%. So seasonally, we are definitely seeing prices drop across the board. And these changes aren't going unnoticed either. A lot of the housing crash YouTubers are commenting on how home prices are dropping in Dallas. One popular YouTuber said people were leaving Texas, and the way he knew this was that prices were going down, which must indicate inventory is going up, and which must mean people are leaving. Another popular YouTuber described how Texas new construction is having a fire sale and how this is huge. Your real difference here is whether people interpret these price drops as seasonal or sustained, okay? By sustained, meaning they indicate an incoming, pronounced, and long-term decline. Which raises the question, what would it take for the price drops we're seeing right now to be sustainable? I mean, the housing crashers said the same thing last year about this time, right? That the market was crashing, and those that listened and waited it out saw prices frustratingly go right back up again. So is it different this time? I mean, what would we need to see happen to see those price drops stick around and not jump right back up again when spring and summer rolls around? Well, we've got to tip our balance of supply and demand. In terms of supply, we need to see new construction create a massive surplus of homes that way outnumbers our buyers. And are we seeing that? Well, in an article by Knock.com, Janice McDill lists the top 10 markets with the largest expected inventory gains. And of those 10, Dallas was in second place. She projects Dallas as having an inventory growth of 100.4% just in 2023. Mitchell Parton also comments on new construction in Dallas. He describes that home builders have put their foot back on the pedal, beginning construction of 14,795 homes last quarter, approaching the number of homes started a year before. Now, if you go strictly off the MLS data, you're not going to see any kind of incoming supply shift. I mean, it shows very low inventory. However, you have to remember what is not included in MLS data, and that's new construction. There will always be some new construction homes on the MLS, but there is just so many more that never makes it there, just doesn't get listed. What we know right now is with interest rates being offered at 5%, we haven't yet reached a point where new construction supply is just massively exceeding demand. The next thing to watch for is for these homes to be unattainable. What I mean by this is for the homes to be so unaffordable that most people can't afford them and they just sit there as inventory. All this spring and summer, builders were able to make these homes affordable through manipulating interest rates. Remember, reduced interest rates make a massive difference in your monthly payment. That's pretty much what buyers look at. As long as new construction builders can offer these discounted rates, I don't see us hitting a ceiling in affordability. Now here's the thing, instead of looking for excessive inventory building up, we want to look for builder profits going down. If they get to the point that they can't offer these discounted rates, I think they could be in real trouble. I mean, remember, discounting these rates isn't free, okay? Builders lose profit even when they're selling at high prices when they're paying for reduced rates. So we may still see homes flying off the shelves and very little inventory piling up, but builders losing money from lower profits. So watch for those income statements, not their inventory. If we switch over to the demand side, we would need to see less buyers moving to Dallas. Purely from an experiential perspective, I would say around half of our relocating buyers are moving to Dallas because their jobs are relocating them here. However, there are also a significant number who are moving for political reasons, or they're coming here to retire. I mean, they have family and friends, and others just want a lower cost of living. So regardless of the reason, we are seeing a constant influx of people relocating to Dallas. In fact, in May of 2023, the Dallas Morning News wrote an article entitled North Texas Metro Areas Lead Nation in Population Growth. In the article, they reported that new census data shows the Dallas-Fort Worth-Arlington metro area gained over 170,000 residents last year, the biggest population increase for a metro area in the nation. In the article, Jose Adriano states that Texas grew by more than 470,000 people from July 2021 to July 2022, with Dallas County gaining nearly 13,000 people. Now, I have heard some people say that if we see a recession, companies will stop expanding and we won't have employees relocating to Dallas anymore. The problem with that reasoning is that many huge company headquarters are located right here in the Dallas area. And a lot of times these relocators come not because their company is expanding, but rather because it's consolidating. As the economy contracts, companies close up shop in other areas and move their employees to Dallas. I'm not alone in that thinking either. In an article released in June of 2023, Brett Baidas describes a study released by the organization known as Site Selectors. In the article, Baidas explains that site selectors rely on multiple metrics to identify metro areas with favorable long-term labor conditions. According to their new study, they report that the Metroplex is tracking as the 5th fastest growing large metro area in the country by 2028. DFW's 2023 population adds up to 7.8 million people, and the area has a projected population growth rate of 8.64%. They identified the Dallas-Fort Worth area as the 5th fastest growing metro area through 2028, with a projected growth rate of 8.64%. So in Dallas right now, we know for sure we're seeing price declines. Many are proclaiming it to be the start of the long-awaited housing crash. The determining factors there will be if we can upset the balance of supply and demand. And really, in order to see sustained price drops, okay, meaning they last into the spring and summer, we need to see our current supply and demand shift. If you're planning to wait, you definitely want to watch the market for those signs. Are we getting an oversupply of new construction? Have the builders stopped offering incentives because their profit margins are too low? When they do that, prices will no longer be attainable. And of course, will people stop moving into Dallas? Right? Those are all factors you need to be focused on if you're waiting for a sustained market correction. Now, that being said, we are already seeing seasonal price declines, and if history repeats itself, we're going to continue to see those through January. If you'd like to hear more about that subject of seasonality and price drops, I talk more about it in this video, which you may want to watch next. In the meantime, Wendy out.